Hello all, Game Methuselah. This is going to be the second adventure in my Twilight of Fey Albion campaign. I hope by now everyone has had a chance who wanted to play the first adventure. As I had alluded to previously, when you get back from the adventure, there's always multiple things that can happen. Now, I'm assuming that the party won. That'll be the first thing. If the party wins, they've rescued the children, they're back to the village. There is an immediate problem. The elders or the druidic elders are concerned that they might be tainted with some sort of elven curse or some nefarious plot to infest the town. So they must be examined. They must be put to the question. They must be found out that they are pure of heart. This is a lot like witch trials of the ancient age, where the witch was thrown in the water with a bunch of stones on her, and if she didn't drown, she's a witch. If she did drown, oh, she was innocent. This doesn't look really good for a lot of these kids. I mean, there is a vested interest in these people to keep people scared. Best to control the populace by keeping them nervous. That only we can protect you from the bad guys. And as I said before, the heroes they're a problem to that. Maybe things aren't as bad as they say, or maybe these guys don't really know everything. So it's very possible that your player characters might come in conflict with the druids. Mine did. It almost came down to blows, but fortunately cooler heads have prevailed in all the different encounters like this. So it has not. But what then does get put forward by the druids is, okay, if you don't want the kids to be put through the test, the elven druid had this amulet. And this amulet, which I think is a periap of health, it's really nothing strange, but the druids think it's some magical dude. And go get it, bring it back, and then we can test that the children aren't tainted. Now, anybody who knows anything about magic is going to realize it's not likely there's an item that does this. Maybe there is, but you don't want to argue necessarily with the druids because you don't want the children to be put to the question, and maybe not survive the answer. So this is what the party will do. And this is where the second adventure starts. Now, other things that could have happened. If your party was wiped out and you're regenerating a new party, depending upon what happens, if it was a very close fight, maybe the druid died, maybe a bunch of the others died, then what you're going to do is take them into the second adventure. Because the second adventure is going to be a situation where the protagonist adventure, the Bullywogs, if the druid, the dryad and her minions were badly wiped out, they're going to attack and capture the rest. And they're going to bring them down for their nefarious plan, which I will point out, obviously, in the adventure as I lay it out. They have a priest who is a follower of Demogorgon. Now, he doesn't know that it's Demogorgon. In fact, he really doesn't know much about anything. But he looks cool, and he seems to give him some magical power. So he has been worshiping for a long time, and thusly has become a priest, even though I'm not sure he realizes that. Now, as far as the adventures go, it's really a running encounter, as you'll see I laid out, which I like. It's good for a fairly quick evening. Normally, there's one additional random encounter that they can bypass if they have wilderness and can make a roll. Maybe you want to do a stealth roll or however you want to do it. Best always to use skills that your players have and give them a chance. Maybe it's even survival. When there's a lot of death and destruction, as it would have been in the first adventure, it attracts Sturgies, which of course you guys know I love. There's a large Sturgy encampment that has now come around the entry to this area and will try to feed upon the carrion. And the problem is enough time has passed that the carrion really aren't too edible anymore, but the Sturgies are still there. So when new fresh blood shows up, the group of Sturgies will attack. Normally I make this a medium to hard encounter. I might make it a medium layered with another medium encounter so that you get sort of waves of Sturgies. You know how much I love my little waves of battles. I even had a concept for a little Sturgy swarm, but I'm still playing with that, so I don't want to put it out there for you. But I think it would be an interesting thing to do. Now, I really love swarms, and I think they're a great way to run little teeny monsters, and Spurges would be perfect for it. But going on to what we're doing. If you failed completely and the druid was not wiped out, she survived, most of her minions survived, then you can rerun the first adventure again. The only preamble to that is before the party goes out, they're attacked in town by rogues. Now, the rogues want two things. A, they think maybe you're weak and they can get anything you might have found out there. Secondly, they want the information because they don't know where this ruin is. And they'd like to go out there to see if there's some magical treasures because they've heard the rumors that the druids have found things. Now, you can lay this out to your players any way you want. Again, the treasure at the end should always include something interesting as well as the amulet. You can change the amulet around from what I did. I had only rolled randomly and just used it as that, but you can make it sort of anything within. The level of treasure should have at least one magical item even if you don't roll it. And it should be one level higher than whatever the party level is. So when, like you're generating random treasure, you generate it level, you assume you got it, and then whatever level it's at, H or G or N or whatever magical table they say to roll on, at least one of the items, you pick one level higher and you roll. Now, if it's an item that the Bullywogs would have easily understood and used, then they'll be carrying it. If it's not, then it will be in a treasure pile at the end, which is this large statue of Demogorgon with all kinds of treasure on it. And, of course, the mystery of why they were worshiping Demogorgon can haunt them for whatever. I think I laid it out pretty good. Once again, I'm not doing maps because I tend not to do maps. I do maps for large dungeon crawls, and then I usually draw it out. Now, what I have is dungeon tiles and various different maps that you've seen. But of course, this will work just as easily on a white erase board. Or if you have different tiles or the cardboard cutout tiles or whatever, you can modify my map to suit your need any way you want. The only difference is you need to have it like at least one sort of water feature because there's something that lives in the water. And it's a cleanup crew, maybe something else. It's up to you. The other advantage is, of course, that the amphibious Bullywogs can swim, so it sort of allows them to swim from one room to another. Thusly, they can sort of jump in one place and pop up in another. And it adds for a little interest in the campaign and an interesting factor in the battle. I'm trying to lay all this out, so hopefully you'll be able to find it clear. Again, I've given you the deal. If you want to do other random encounters, if they get lost or whatever, again, like I said, use a standard random encounter for the forest or the deep forest, which they have in the DMG. And it's actually very useful, and I think it works perfectly well. And that way your game is a little different from mine. And anything you want to modify, please do. If you don't want to use Bullywogs, if you don't want to use the water, you can always sub in goblins and things like that obviously would exist in a fairy world. And that way you can use the miniatures you have. I've done this all my life. I really only ran adventures with miniatures I had, with maps and things I could bring out, unless I was going to, of course, use the dry erase. And that's because I wanted the visual dramatic effect. If you care less, you can use whatever you want. There are a lot of paper chits out there. I even think just scribbling down on a little, cardboard chit or using some of the stuff that comes with like the fantasy trip or the little cutout silhouettes can really help. Even taking a photograph and then making a little thing on printing different models on a printout and cutting them out and using them as stand-ups. There's all kinds of things available if you don't want to use miniatures, but you still want a visual appeal. If not, obviously there's the armchair. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around now and show you the campaign. If there's any questions, please feel free to contact me. If you don't contact me directly on Patreon, contact me on my Twitter. It's game_Methuselah. And I'm glad to answer questions, and especially if you want to change things up. If you do things and you find them even more interesting, or if you want to add to the storyline, or you do add to the storyline, let me know. I'm always willing to have the history modified by what you do. We may rerun into this location with something you added or something different. So please feel free. Remember, this is a cooperative storytelling, and the more cooperation I get, the better. Now, we haven't got to the point where I was going to be going to places and running events yet. And that's unfortunate. But it looks like after the first of the year, I'm going to be getting myself a location that I'm going to be sharing with my wife that will allow me to run games for open play here in Southern California. It'll be in Orange County. So if anyone's around or plans to maybe be around, let me know. Maybe we can arrange to get together and run games, either in Albion, Fantasy Trip, Peckamil Empire of the Petal Throne, D&D Zero. I'm willing to do it all. So it's always good, and I love to meet new players who are interested in the gaming. So until we have a chance to speak again, fight me devils, fight, for I hate peace, and here's the encounter. Game on.
As the party moves into this room, the Bullywogs will fight a defensive style battle. They're really looking to slow the party down and get away and warn their compatriots. This is a very standard thing I do in a lot of different adventure games. I find that having games where everything is sort of static from one room to another is kind of boring. Now, of course, when you're playing with modules, sometimes you feel restricted that you're trying to do what the module is telling you and not necessarily, do the most advantageous thing for the battle. I don't do that. The advantage there, of course, is you can get away with a lot smaller items. There's also the feel that, of course, everything is much more realistic and that this is a living type environment. But as the party moves in, the Bullywogs will attack. 1, 2, 3 will come in and they will attempt to fight. Now, again, you might have 3, you could have 4 or 5. It really sort of depends upon the level of your party. My assumption at this point is they're about second level. That's usually how I work it. The first adventure, if it's a success, is going to give you a full level. That way it's easier for using milestone. If you're doing experience points, obviously it's different. If they fail in the adventure the first time and they did not win, then they're going to be getting only half a level, and this will be their second encounter, in which case they're going to be first level, and you want to build your creatures, appropriately. The battle ensues. Again, the monsters will tend to fight defensively as they can. They will attack, but they're going to still try to not die. Kind of the standard thing with my creatures is that they usually have their little bullywug kids at home and their little lives and aspirations, as I've told you about goblins. So nobody really wants to sell their life out. I don't like the idea of creatures just keep fighting to the absolute end, because what the heck, you're going to get experience for them if they run away or not. That's not really very realistic. You want them to feel like it's a battle. So immediately one of the bullywugs at the back is going to open the door and make a run for it. And he's going to take off down there. Now, the party may or may not be able to pursue, but it always basically sets the stage for the fact that that's how a defensive perimeter is going to work. It's going to be like a picket line to set up the idea to warn the others. Now, you saw the amount of figures I have, really not sufficiently for the whole encounter, but they could be. So you don't have a problem with feeding them in. If they kill a bunch of them, you can just recycle them for the battle. Based upon level, you're going to know what points you are. So at any one point in time, I'm guessing there might be 10 of these little bullywugs. Usually the 4 large ones are the bodyguards for the leader. And then, of course, you're going to have the leader as well. Now, as I mentioned the water before, there's a cleanup crew that lives in the water. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cleanup crew, because the cleanup crew won't bother them, as I said, unless there are major casualties, and then they'll just come to clean up, and you might just get caught incidentally. But it even could be something like, say, a gibbering mouther. Now, that adds another dynamic, which you might want to think about. The other dynamic is this gibbering mouther doesn't like the bullywugs either. So it's just as likely to attack them as it is you. It might even eventually be involved in a situation where, in a final scenario in the big room where there's a large opening, it might attack everybody. So you might have a situation where you have a 3-pronged battle going. You have bullywugs fighting the party fighting the bullywugs, and then the gibbering mouther is fighting both of them. So thusly, who knows what's going to happen. This adds a lot of interesting things to the conflict as well. Again, as I tell you, you're not etched in stone here. The idea is this is your campaign, and I want you to build it and live it so it's not exactly the same as mine. In this case, what they did is they fought a standing battle, at least the 2 times I've played it. They fought a standing battle coming in. My creature in the water was a gelatinous cube. It stayed out of the way until after there were lots of casualties, and then normally would try to attack the party at the end. In both cases, the players fled. They didn't want to have any part of fighting a gelatinous cube. For you, the interesting thing about a gelatinous cube is they almost invariably have treasure in them. This is a really good way to give out some kind of interesting magical item with a creature like a gelatinous cube. Because if you kill it, well, of course, if you know to look around and stay through the muck at the end, it's always good to find something of interest. What they're, of course, looking for is this amulet. And the amulet, the townsfolk have essentially told them, is something that recognizes the taint. It's actually not, but again, as I told you, our druids are sort of stretching and bending the truth a little bit to try to keep control of their population. So the fight ensues in here. Now, the interesting thing is, as it starts to collapse on the bullywugs, assuming that it does, they might do something interesting, which is they can jump into the water and swim away. Now, it's an interesting thing. The party could do it, but then, of course, you have them swimming through very murky water that they're not familiar with. Now, that becomes a little problematic, as you'll see later when I mention the fact that the water grate going into the main room has a gate on it, like a little grate that lets the water in and out, because they don't want whatever's living in the water coming into their lair. So it would be bad if you get caught underneath the building there and go accordingly. But assuming that they're pursuing, the Bollywogs usually fight with javelins. They could have blowguns or other things as well. But as the party moves around here, again, they're going to harry the party. They're just going to try to do things to sort of harass them and slow them down while they make preparations. But there may be a couple of them here tossing javelins or using blowguns or something, but immediately the party has a decision to make. Are they going to try to jump the water to get into melee? Or are they going to try to, swim through it? Can they jump the water with their heavy armor if they have it? There's all kinds of little interesting things here. But the advantage, of course, whatever map system you're using, take advantage of the color. Take advantage of the different things that are going on. Now, the party knows there's a door. Maybe this goes to where they want it to go. And in this case, it does. Now, there's a secondary door here that the Bullywugs are going to use to escape. But both of these lead to the main chamber. Now, you don't have to obviously lay this out. You draw it as you go. Or you basically, use the tiles and lay them down, however you're working it, or whatever maps or pieces you're laying down, you do that as you go. And then you put down the creatures and the like. I do this ahead of time. Often I'll have friends who've done this and then they cover it up. So you can sort of see the general perspective, but they cover it up as you visually can see it. In this case, my whole map might have taken 4 pieces to cover it. You have the throne room at the end, the main room that's going to be where a big battle is going to be, and these 2 or 3 little outsider rooms, which, really start the action, but are not a part of the main deal. So we go from here, the battle continues. Depending upon how the party works, the Bullywugs are going to fall back and run because they don't want to get killed. And they're going to try to pursue through this door and escape. Now, this is, as I pointed out to you, is a place where you could put a trap. So if you want to have a pit trap, it would not be a bad idea to place it right here. And then the Bullywugs, of course, know about it, so they jump over it, which is not too difficult for them. Or they basically just move around it carefully. If the party is in close pursuit, they'll notice that, and potentially you give them a good advantage to be able to see the fact that they're ignoring this one section of the room, and it won't take a whole lot of thought to realize what that is. And we'll go from there. Now, this is the big room. As you can see, what I've done with the water is you have this fountain, and it's always interesting to do, where it's just kind of pouring out water. And the water goes into the great pond, so maybe there's some miraculous thing that's causing this. You also have flowing water coming in. So the water's not stagnant. It becomes more of a fact that it's active, and the party, gets that feeling. It might go someplace. Now, in my game here, it was just a feature. I didn't have any plans to use it for anything else, but you surely could. And you can always add more and more interesting things here. Or you can add parts of a future adventure. The idea is whatever happens here, you never know, depending upon the party outcome, what's going to happen. Now, in this room is where I think the major battle starts to take place. What has happened is this far door, which leads to, as I've shown you, the throne room to Demogorgon, which for some reason the Bullywugs don't really know who he is, but he think he's really cool looking. So they're starting to worship her. And as they gather treasure and loot, they basically have hidden it in here. Another opportunity. So at the end, there's going to be good treasure in this room. And of course, some sort of a magical item. The item that they're going to have to find, which is the amulet, is going to be worn by their leader, which is this guy here. Now, he's going to be, if nothing else, a basic bullywug that I've modified to give some clerical abilities to. And that's useful. It helps to have something like this. He's the unbeknownst to priest of Demogorgon. And he doesn't know who he's worshiping, but he knows he's getting support from this god, so he's thrilled, and it goes from there. He will start out in the throne room with 2 of his more hunky bodyguards. The littler bullywogs, depending on how many there are, and that's going to be based upon the level of your party and your encounter level, are going to be here. And as the party basically enters this portion of the underground, the battle will ensue. And of course, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. All of that will be determined by the dice roll and the like. But remember, depending upon what has happened, if you have wiped out the party and rescued all the kids or most of the kids, then this will be something you're being brought back to investigate to get this item that was lost. If it's a situation where it was maybe a rescue or you failed or it was a draw last time, then what's going to happen is there's going to be some of the captured children in here who are being on a regular basis sacrificed to this god. Now, they are just kids. Again, they think they're elves or they've been treated by the dryad they're elves. So if you rescue them, of course, there are additional people for you to take back to the town, which gets you more notoriety and potential problems with the druid. Now, the amulet itself, once you detect it, is going to be, I think, a Patreon of Health or something. I will list that as well. But anything you want to give out is fine. But the idea is it's not exactly what the druids have said it is. It's not some detection of elven taint that they're claiming it does, some way of purifying. It's just basically an artifact that they lost. They want it back. And they have basically sent you on this goose chase to basically find it or die, because as I've told you before, you've in any way or shape, form, potentially are modifying their abilities to control the populace. Now, the battles go. If the battle continues here and the Bollywogs are doing even mediocre, it's likely that the cleric's going to come out and fight. His bodyguard will fight along with him. The party can be maybe on both sides. They may have gone through the other door and come in this way. However it works, if there's a pit trap here and someone's fallen into the trap, maybe they got to try to get him out and do whatever. But this is really it. This is pretty much the adventure. As far as overland encounters and stuff like that, we've talked about that. When you have a failure, my thing is you basically put in a creature encounter. So if they are basically doing their mapping, and I'm just showing you the whole adventure so you can see the map layout and running it again, it's pretty simple. And this is how I like a lot of different adventures. Now, you may have already had a random encounter in the overland. You may have battled rogues in the town to begin with based upon the outcome of your previous adventure. All these things are going to be dependent upon how the previous adventure goes and how you guys are running your game. Again, you don't have to make it look exactly like this, but try to keep to the basic concept. If there is no water, that's okay. In my case, it really didn't make any difference in this game. It was strictly a feature and allowed me to use my cleanup crew and things that can be caught in the water. Plus, of course, these creatures being amphibious, maybe they go upstream and are able to escape into the underworld. Maybe there's something more in there. That's all for you to do for future adventures. I love the idea that you use a location once and then suddenly you find out there was more there than you knew. A hidden passage or some other area that you didn't find, and additional treasure can be there. But remember to run your battles well, and I will put suggested encounters at the end here so you can take a look at what I've done. For sure, there's going to be a magical item of some different nature in this statue pile of gold and goodies, and a really nice treasure. This is going to be a pretty much guaranteed treasure roll in Lair for the creatures, and I will more than likely upstep one of the magical items at least one level above it. So, if it's lower level, I'll move it up a little bit because I want to at this point give out something that's interesting. As I have often said, magic is the currency. Magical items and things are the currency of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't like being stingy with them. I like giving them out to players. I run a hard game. I run the creatures intelligently and alike, so I want the players to feel that what they get on it was worth the coming in and fighting. So there you go on the basic map. I'm going to go ahead and move up just a little bit more so you can take one last look from the top of what I produced and designed. But again, anything similar to this will work for you. It actually does not have to even be connected to the above ground
that I used in the first encounter. It could be something entirely separate just in the area for if you don't have stairs or you don't want to do that or however you want to do it. If you think of something different, please use it. Make it yours, make it interesting, and then go from there. And if you have all kinds of interesting encounters, if you change things around and you really like the outcome, maybe it was a Sturgy Lair. You know how much I love them. Let me know. I always love to hear what other DMs are doing and what they've done in the game. The idea is to keep the concept going. And in this case, again, not a whole lot of elven interaction, so there's not going to be anything that's going to change the canon that I've come up with. Not that, of course, that's etched in stone either, but it allows you freedom to do what you want. What you really want to do is do creatures that are sort of evil fey. In this case, these could just as equally be orcs and goblins, but of course, since we're in Albion and it really aren't orcs and goblins, you have these little frog demons, which are really sort of fey type creatures. Kind of evil fey that are in the woods and alike. And that adds more to the mythos and color of the game I'm running. So here you go in the battle. I hope this is of some help to you. If you have any questions, if you want to see other things, let me know. I'm always willing to talk more and show you different things about this type of game. So more will be coming. So wait till the end here and we'll go from there. Okay, the first of our little protagonists here is the Bullywug. This is a standard Bullywug out of the Monster Manual, 5th edition. The only difference, of course, is I've added a little special taste based upon sort of my feeling of the way they were from 4th edition. And that's if you look at the leap with the little star. If they leap into combat, and they have a 20-foot leap, which is standard on the creature, if they leap into combat, they give up their multi-attack bite, but get advantage with their spear. Now, that makes it nice, so they can kind of make sort of a charge attack with the spear, or in this case, a leaping attack. Pretty much other than that, it's a standard Bullywug. The second one is going to be my Bullywug Brute. Now, the Bullywug Brute is also inspired from the original 4th edition. He's pretty much stronger, a little bit better armor, the same hit points. Speed's a little lower. But his strength is really big, as you can see. He's got a strength of +4. He still has multi-attack, which is the bite, but as you'll notice, it does a lot more damage, and it hits a lot better because it's strength. He has a spear attack, which is he always fights with 2 hands, so he's getting the D8 +4. A pretty effectively nasty creature. Now, the thing he has with the leap is if he does the leap into combat, he gives up his bite, but if he hits the opponent, he does not have advantage, he will knock him down. It's kind of an interesting little color, and I think you'll get some fun with this, and it makes for a sort of imposing bodyguard-style defender. The last one, of course, is my little Bullywug Priest. And that's this guy here. Now, basically what I'm just doing him up is a standard sort of 3rd level priest. He has no real stats. He's essentially originally a Bullywug. So he's got the basic AC, and he has his hit points based upon 3 levels of a D8, no D10. His speed is standard. He has a bite, and he has a staff as a multi-attack. Amphibious and leap, but no special ability with his leap if he uses it. And then I just basically gave him what I would utilize as the standard spells. For some reason, I think I made an error on this in his challenge rating. I kind of think that maybe a mage type or priest type character holds a higher challenge rating, but I'm not really sure. I just moved him up from the CR of the Brute up to 1. So if you find out that he's wrong, or if I find out he's wrong later, I will let you know. But anyway, there are the 3 creatures I used. The rest of the stuff you would use, ochre jellies and alike, you could pretty much just get out of the Monster Manual, and they're pretty much standard 5th edition. But there they are. These are the plastic Bullywugs. I'm knocking them all over and killing them all right. That you can usually get on eBay. You can still find them pretty much in packages, but if you look on the internet, on eBay and stuff, you're likely to be able to find these pretty easily. They're good, so enjoy them. All I did on these guys was give them a wash and did some flock the bases, and that's all there was. So enjoy. Hope that's enough information on the monsters. Any other questions, let me know.